If you were to explain for somebody that's never ever tried the wines of Mayacamas, what would you say?
The styles are very, call them kind of classic Napa, you know, from an era of winemaking that really put Napa on the map. You know, the Paris tasting in '76. You know, a lot of the producers that were in that tasting, I think in that era, the wines, you know, typically were slightly lower alcohol and had quite a bit more acidity, and that's a style we continue today. So very much, you know, food friendly, kind of high acid. Great energy and fresh, kind of across the spectrum. And obviously, we have different wines we make, and they kind of hit at different parts of that kind of flavor spectrum, kind of depending on what we're trying to accomplish in the season.
So, if you were to pick three words for which three words would you pick?
Focused, textured, vibrant.
Please tell me the background and the history of Mayacamas.
Well, we were founded in 1889 by a gentleman named John Henry Fisher. He finished our old stone cellar in 1889. So he was up here a few years before that. You know, it's a long-lived winery. Certainly got a lot of history. Wasn't the name Mayacamas until the 40s. So 1941, Jack and Mary Taylor bought the property and started making wine commercially in '47, and they founded the brand Mayacamas. The Mayacamas is the name is the Wapo Native American name for the entire mountain range that runs from San Pablo Bay in the south, you know, clear north out of Napa County into Sonoma County. They owned the property through 1968. And then a gentleman named Bob Travers, Bob and his wife Eleanor bought the property in 1968. He made the wines here until he sold the property in 2013 to the Schottenstein family, and that's who I work for now. I started a couple months after they bought the property in 2013.
Tell me about the vineyards that you have here and what kind of soils you'll find here on top of the mountains here.
We're at the very top of Mount Veeder proper. We're in the Mount Veeder appellation, but our property really kind of is just adjacent to the peak of Mount Veeder, which is kind of the highest. Our vineyards start here at just about 1,750 feet, and we grow grapes all the way up to just under 2,300 feet. So quite dynamic hillside vineyard with let's see, it's 50. We'll call it 50 acres planted, mostly to Cabernet, with Merlot, Cab Franc, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, a touch of Grenache for a rosé we make. So it's a pretty dynamic property with a lot of variation, both in elevation, microclimate. It's spread out over 465 acres. So the soils are largely, you know, we call it different states of weathered volcanic.
Tell me about the winery. What kind of production facilities you have, and what kind of barrel rooms you have here?
Yeah, so it's a fairly small production facility. Built in different stages over the course of the history here. The old stone cellar was, like I said, built in 1889. That houses our large format aging cellar for our red wines. So in that room we age in in 225 liter all the way up to 45 hectoliter. But mostly in that room it's large format Foudre casks. That the wines on the Cabernet side of things are going to be aged for just under 3 years in wood. So we largely use large format and neutral oak in that aging program.
Tell me, what do we have here on the table?
Yeah, so we have a 2024 Sauvignon Blanc in the first glass.
On the right?
On the far right. Then you have a 2023 Chardonnay. And then you have a 2022 Merlot, a 2020 Cabernet Sauvignon, and a 2018 Cabernet Sauvignon that's part of our special bottling series, which is a smaller production Cabernet Sauvignon. On the Sauvignon Blanc, I mean, to me it's pretty tropical right now. and very saline. I mean, that's kind of one of the trademarks, I think, of the Sauvignon Blancs is a kind of a salinity to the wines, kind of that slate, the juiciness, but also some length and a drying element to it, where you kind of have a slightly not a really ripe pear, but like a just ripe pear. It kind of almost has a tannic element to it as well.
And then the next one, what do we have here?
2023 Chardonnay, one of the more elegant expressions we've been able to kind of conjure off of the property. Some pretty kind of jasmine, kind of high-toned, kind of green tea sort of element to it. Very fragrant, kind of a note of kind of rich citrus, kind of ripe Meyer lemon sort of.
And on the palate?
Citrus is dominant. That salinity, which is to me pretty key to the Chardonnay. That shows that kind of restraint and length on the palate. It almost has there's a kind of a honeyed wax sort of element to it as well.
Yeah. And the first red one, what do we have here then?
22 Merlot. This wine has 76% Merlot, 24% Cabernet Franc.
Okay.
Kind of a ripe raspberry sort of element to it, with almost a touch more power than you might think of with the normal raspberry, not as astringent. And there's kind of some dried bay and tobacco on the nose.
And the next red wine?
2020 Cabernet Sauvignon. You kind of go to a similar place, but you almost want to go more kind of not poison, but almost like cassis, kind of like black currant, but not quite, not super dark though. On the palate, almost you get kind of a sarsaparilla, cedar or sarsaparilla.
Yeah.
But still ample fruit as well, and great great length. It holds its finish quite well.
Yeah.
And as with all the wines, there's a kind of that length that's driven by, I think, especially the reds, kind of a confluence of tannin and acidity kind of together, driving home the tail end of the palate.
And then the wine over here then? What do we have here?
2018 Cabernet Sauvignon. It's a special bottling from the Sunset Block. So this is a vineyard I was talking a little bit about when we were talking about soils. This is situated at just about 2,100 feet. I can't help but kind of find some of the more gritty, kind of gravelly, stony aromatics. Maybe I'm putting myself in the vineyard and thinking about the soils too deeply, but there's certainly there's a earthy rusticity. There's ample dark fruit, like very, very, kind of rich blueberry. Yeah. It must be one of those days where I'm leaning towards tobaccos, but I get like kind of a green tobacco, green cardamom. I got kind of a cardamom, kind of baking spice, kind of a chai spice sort of kind of tinge to it.
If you look then into the future, into the crystal ball, what do you see?
I think we're going to continue to progress in our farming. First and foremost, I talked a little bit about our commitment to organic farming. We'll further that. We've got some biodynamic processes in play that as we come out of vineyard redevelopment, we get to hone those systems.
If you were to give an advice to a young person that wants to become a winemaker, what would you say?
The excitement that comes with every year being a new vintage and a new challenge. Embrace that. Kind of trying to best you can live in the moment and really focus on the vintage you're working on. Staying humble comes along with that. When it comes down to it, get in your space in the cellar or in the vineyard and work through the problems that you're going to encounter in a growing season, and that's going to get you to good endpoints.